I'm Michael Magid, live from Hollywood, California. With me, you know him as ProGK Academy _ on Instagram and just ProGK Academy on YouTube, the one and only Omar Zeenni. And joining us today, because it's about that time that we start talking about proper sessions, guys. We've got I hope I can say this title properly. Actually, you know what? We're just going to go with Director of Goalkeeping for San Diego Surf and Goalkeeper Coach with the U17 Women's National Team, Louis Hunt. Louis, man, it's been a while. This is awesome, man. I'm glad we finally got you on. It only took you 17 reviews on iTunes to finally get an invitation.
Yeah, there you go. I appreciate you having me on. Hey, even the fact that we've done a course together years ago and I still didn't get the call up earlier.
Well, you know what's so funny is because I was talking to Omar, I think, a couple weeks ago, and I was like, hey, you know who we really need to have on the show? Louis Hunt. And he's like, I was just about to say that.
It was actually like I've seen Louis on social media a lot and especially on Twitter. So it's been I've seen his name swirl around a bunch and I've done my research as well. And it's a pleasure to have you on, man. I'm excited.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I've said this before a bunch of times. I think you guys do the best job out there for getting the access to the goalkeepers and the stuff you talk about, the people that you have on. So pleasure to be on.
Yeah, and Omar's got the best green screens in the world. I mean, like he just had the Polar Express, the Northern Lights going on back there?
I don't know. Oh. I tried to put Aston Villa, but it sent me that Polar Express. I don't know. But anyways, now we're back in live. Everything is back to normal.
This looks solid. Oh, we got the full line in the background too? Is that what's going on?
We do, yeah. The full badge.
Man, that full badge. Well, I mean, what we're trying to do right now is actually we're just trying to brand Aston Villa as much as possible in the United States so that Louis basically is able to convince all of the Villa administration, everybody out there, that there's such a support fan base in the United States. They need to pour all this massive money into the club to make it one of the top clubs once again in the Premier League.
They need to find the next Christian Pulisic and get him drafted into Villa.
Hey, dude, you could definitely. I mean, you guys have what's his face right now? You guys have Indiana Vassilev from the US.
Yeah. Villa have actually got a good little connection with American goalkeepers. We had Brad Friedel for a while when we were good. Guzan was there. Aaron Hyde, who I think you were chatting to last week, the men's goalkeeper coach, is a Villa fan as well. So we're sneaking our way into the infrastructure here.
It was so funny when we were having him on last week. I didn't even think about to ask him what was it like working with Brad Guzan after being a Villa supporter like your entire life, and then all of a sudden the Villa keeper comes in and now you're training them. Like that's got to be kind of a surreal experience. So
yeah, I'd be in trouble if I was in his situation because I think I'd probably just turn into a bit of a fanboy and want to know all the secrets from behind all the stories from behind the scenes.
Well, dude, let's get right into this, guy. So the reason we have Louis on today is because this is a topic that's been kind of coming into the forefront with a lot of people out there. They've been kind of asking, like, okay, how do I run a session now? Like now, the post-COVID era. And by post-COVID, I don't mean that COVID's over. I don't want anyone to think that way, but I mean it. Now that people are starting to get back to training, how can we do this safely, effectively? And Louis and I, we were actually communicating about a week ago, and you started mentioning how you were kind of doing things at Surf, and I was like, dude, here's an excuse. Here's a perfect excuse to get you on the show to talk about what you guys are doing there. So first off, Louis, why don't you just explain to the audience out there, maybe like some parents or some kids who might not know the terminology, what do we mean by a proper session?
Well, I think especially for right now, you've got to go into what the kids are doing at home before you get into what's going to happen when they come back out to a training session. Depending on where each club are at, the different stages of where they're at upon their return, whether they've been already back, they haven't been back at all, they've just been doing the at-home stuff. I think you got to kind of take a step back and talk about what they've been doing at home first, because that's going to dictate and lead what that proper session looks like. I think for the field players, it probably hasn't been terrible because they've got to do lots of little different technical things with their feet. Obviously, from a goalkeeping point of view, you can do that as well at home, but the dribbling aspect of it and the skills and the twists and the turns maybe aren't as effective. So I think with regards to a proper session as you're entering back, it's going to determine on what kind of state your players are at from a fitness point of view, how much they've been doing at home. And then, I mean, that's going to lead into a whole different bunch of different questions that I think we'll probably get onto. But the biggest thing is going to be just easing the kids into it. If you throw the kids straight back into a high intensity session that you might do on a Wednesday in the middle of the season, it ain't going to work. You got to ease the kids back into it, strip things right down from the goalkeeper movements point of view, from a technical point of view, and just slowly build from there.
Yeah, you know what's interesting is yesterday I just did a session with a collegiate goalkeeper, D1 goalkeeper, and one of the things that I recognized is just the lack of game fitness there was there in that session. No disrespect to that goalkeeper, great goalkeeper, very high level goalkeeper, but you could see the difference in regards to understanding the game was still there, but it's just that extra sharpness of making everything game realistic. And Omar, I know you've been really, really big on this when you've been getting goalkeepers coming back who haven't been in a game environment at all. And how have you been kind of easing that transition like Louis talking about?
Honestly, I've definitely have made my mistakes early on in the COVID situation where I, came back into my sessions with all these webinar notes, all this idea of I want to be this revolutionary, idealist. When I do my sessions, I want it to be game realistic from the start. Every single kick that I have, I want it to be game-like. And that, unfortunately, like Louis said, maybe mid-season on a Wednesday, that makes sense. But when you have goalkeepers who haven't touched the ball, their hand-eye coordination is off. Pretty much any volley you hit at their face, they're flinching, their eyes are squinting, just like we do when we come back from vacation, or at least when I used to play, came back from vacation. I needed probably 3 or 4 sessions to get myself back up to speed. So I was trying to do way too much too early. And every time the session would be over, I would text the older kids especially, and I would say, hey guys, like, how was the session? What did you think? And the majority of the answers were, I love the early part of the session where we were working on the bubble. I love that because I think I needed that to get my, like you said, like match fitness, but it's more so goalkeeper fitness. And I know all of us know what that means. It's just making sure that hand-eye coordination, we're trusting our hands a little bit more. We have more muscle memory and stability in our legs because we've done it week in and week out. And unfortunately, I was trying to do too much too soon. But I had a session yesterday, and I will gladly say that I stuck more to the bubble. Probably like 70% of the session was bubble and, short movements and recovery movements. And the kids, they responded saying they loved it because it allowed them to, build a rhythm again. And I think that's what we need coming out of this whole situation.
But my question for you guys, both of you here, and especially you, Louis, is that like, I mean, I understand wanting to keep it in the bubble and wanting to keep it clean and everything like that. But like, are we doing them a disservice if we're not making it organic enough that we're changing the variables of the service and all that sort of thing? Or do you think we just need to get back down to that basics and those repetitions right now, Louis?
Yeah, I think 2 things. One, it's such a unique, never happened before time that there's probably at the moment no right or wrong answer to that. Everybody's unique situations, it's going to be, they're going to have to figure it out. Like Omar said there, he did it one way and then he stripped it back, and that's benefited his keepers. I think the other thing to add to it is the dialogue. I think you've got to go into these sessions with a real plan about what do you want to get out of this period of time. So for me, we've just had a semi-new assistant coach come on to the sessions, and I was saying to her, watch how awkward these sessions are going to be to begin with, because I'm just going to plow the goalkeepers with questions about, what do you think? What would you add here? What would you take away here? And then at the end of the session tell them, I want you to come to the next session with a more open mindset, because one of the things that certainly in my environment at the moment we found is the kids are still very robotic in their thinking. They've been told what to do in every session in the past. And this period of time is an opportunity for us to try and take them out of that mindset a little bit and change that mindset. So they are more, they're increasing their IQ, they're thinking more as the session goes on, they're challenging us as coaches. So having that as kind of the driving force of trying to change the environment of the session has been what we've built the sessions on. And if that means the sessions are a little slower and there's less reps and there's more talking, this is the best time to do that. I think it's
but
the
your
best time.
DOC's got to understand that, though. They got to understand, like, that's where you're going with it.
Yeah, and I was going to lead on to say your club, your DOCs, your head coaches, your parents have to understand that. And that probably comes from a communication aspect. Maybe it's an email that you send out to the keepers and the parents beforehand. It's definitely that dialogue with your DOCs going into, this is what I want to create at the moment within my goalkeeper training environment and my goalkeeper union. But that education piece is for sure, and the communication piece for sure needs to be there.
You know, one thing that that was really surprising to me this summer, because I've been trying to work, as you know, you two as well too, have been really studying a lot during this quarantine in regards to watching webinars and seeing other people's sessions and trying to just learn from everybody else. Is I didn't recognize that it wasn't just my youth keepers, but it was also my higher level older goalkeepers, that when I asked them why we're doing something or where we're going with this or where would they like to take their game, the answers were so vague and obscure that I realized they don't really know what they're talking about. They've been so programmed into having the answers spoon-fed to them by their coach. And I think that's something that I've really been trying to instill in people during this time period, is that autonomy, is that understanding of being independent and putting that independent study in. Like, Omar, I know, like, you've really been talking to a lot of goalkeepers and been like, what have you been doing during this time? You know, because there's only so much that I can do for you before you go back to college.
Yeah, I think that's back to Louis' point, though, I think, and to build off what you were saying, Mike, Louis' point about just having those conversations and allowing us to see what's going through the goalkeeper's mindset going into those sessions. And I think, Mike, you've always told me there's a difference between an actual coach and a trainer. A trainer just shoots balls, and a coach actually has those conversations to know what's best for the goalkeeper, not just what's best for me, at least in my context of what I put on social media, what's good for my posting. So I've been able to have those conversations, and, you know, I've had to dial it back because I was so amped up about, you know, Anthony White talking about his, you know, serving off the ground, no more volleys. And I was like, okay, let's do that. So then I stepped in and I was doing, you know, touch and shot, and, you know, I'm not a striker. So sometimes I take a big touch, and to try and get it to the goalkeeper's bubble or to their hands, it's difficult sometimes. So I needed to peel that back and have those conversations. And those goalkeepers kept telling me, look, you know we want to work on game realistic stuff, but by the time we're stepping into those exercises, it's like we haven't even gotten our hands warmed up. We haven't really gotten our feet warmed up. We haven't been able to, you know, get a good grip of the ball. We haven't been able to shuffle our feet to, you know, smother a ball that maybe we're diving for instead of taking two little shuffles and getting to it. So like we needed to iron those things out. And so those conversations you're talking about, I had to have those. And whether it was a text, a phone call, or a voice message, and they would leave me, now I have way more of an idea of what they need to get themselves ready for college. And who knows if there's going to be a season, but for the most part, those kids have just been saying, we're essentially coming to you to just get us sharp. And then once we get into our team setting, we'll expand our range and do all those game realistic stuff. But right now, we just need a lot of repetitions, and getting our technique up to speed is what I've been hearing from young kids.
Louis, is that a little bit of ego swallowing for a goalkeeper coach right now, to kind of be like, okay, you know what, like I want to reinvent the wheel right now, but right now is not the time, and, you know, maybe I need to step back?
It is. I think there's nothing wrong with experimenting and trying different things. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Your kids are ultimately going to benefit from a training session that you put on if you've put time and effort into it and you care. So I don't think there's anything wrong with trying something, it not working, as long as you're able to adapt. I think to Omar's point, the stuff that Anthony and Tim Dittmer and all the FA guys put on, I think for us out here, certainly in Southern California in the US, it's the balance between wanting to go down that route that the FA with their FA DNA stuff has put on, because it is so good. And then where our kids are at currently right now here in the US with how they've maybe been trained in the past. And I think if we go so extreme to one end, it's going to be difficult. And what Omar just said there is spot on. And I've had those same conversations. There's almost sometimes a big pushback. Well, we don't want to go so different. Let's go back to what we were doing before. And if you can get that balance between the two, I think you're going to be onto a winner, and you'll probably end up finding out what works for this keeper in this session and that keeper in that session, and different teams and different age groups really, really well. And I mean, ultimately, I think if you can create the opportunity for players, one of the things that's helped me hugely at Surf, and again, Mike, going back to you're talking about discussions with your DOC. Surf has a mission statement that's about experiences and opportunities. And what I've been able to do with that in mixing my coaching philosophy in my sessions is I'm going to create this opportunity for you guys. As players, you still need to take it. Like I've already gone down the route in my coaching career where I've tried to force kids to get better and force kids to get to their potential and make them drink the water. And now I'm just at the point where I'll lead you there. And now it's down to you. And if you can create these opportunities for growth, then it's still on the kids to do that. And if they don't, ultimately that's not your fault as a coach. That's them dropping the ball.
Yeah. I want to bring this up right here. By the way, I mean, that's one of those things that's been one of the most, it's still to this day, one of the most difficult things for me to handle is like, why is this kid happy with this? Why is this good enough for this kid? And I'll give you an example. All right. Should we do one more rep? No, I'm good with that one. Okay. You just got scored on. You want to finish on a goal? Like, to me, I don't understand that mindset because that's not who I am. That's not how I'm wired. So it's taking a little bit of me understanding like everyone's wired differently. Everyone wants different, some of your kids want to play, professionally, NWSL, some of your kids want to play in college. Some of your kids just want to play ECNL. That's what they want to do. And it is what it is. So I'm trying to find that balance in regards to my coaching so that everyone in that session, because that's the hard thing for me. And I don't know about for you guys is when I got 3 goalkeepers right now in the summertime, let's say, who have different mindsets of where they want to take their game. Like Omar, I know you deal with this all the time because of the goalkeepers that you're training.
No, I think again, it's I train older kids. I've had some younger ones, and I even posted one recently on YouTube. And I don't know where this person was from, but someone wrote like a really nasty comment, and it was just like,
no,
I think
on YouTube, really?
On YouTube, it was
what a shock.
It was. But the thing is, like, when somebody writes that stuff, like, I used to get emotional about it, but then I watch it unemotional, but like, I have an emotional reaction to it. And then I actually listened to what he was saying, and he was like, yeah, you need to understand that these young kids, you need to develop an actual like baseline for them in terms of foundation of technique, which I thought I was, but I guess to his point, he was just saying that, you're striking the ball too hard. You're not playing the level that they're going to see, the speed they're going to see, the touches they're going to see. And I said, okay, you know what? You're right. I can see your point. So the next few sessions that I've had, I've gone back to, okay, what's my purpose for this session? If all goes to hell, it doesn't go well. But what if I had at least one point that I could make? I worked on low dives today, just having him attack the point, the ball on the ball line, the proper ball line. So for me, I've gotten back to almost like the basics of having a purpose for the sessions for the younger kids and even the older kids as well. Like each one of them has their own, I guess, needs and what they want to do for what they want the session to look like. But I try to get, okay, you want to work on in possession, out of possession, or like, distribution. Then someone wants to work on crossing and someone wants to work on handling. So I get a little bit of each one and I try and bring a little bit to each for the session. And then I, walk up to them before the practice and I say, hey, Mike, this part of the session is going to be for you. These guys are going to, follow along, but I really want you to focus on it. Let's go back to our terminology that we've established. And I'll say, Louis, you the crossing that you and I have been chatting about, we're going to work on it here. Just make sure we remember the little points. Okay. So I have those little side conversations, so I don't have to stop the session, but I have those side conversations. And I feel like when they message me what they need and I actually take it into account and I put it in there, they have more buy-in and they feel like, okay, this is what I'm going to be working on today. I want to make sure that I took those notes that Omar gave me from last session. So we have some retention and some continuation, which I think is good for relationships.
So it's really hard, isn't it, in the club environment? When you're doing individual private sessions, maybe not so much, but I feel like in the club environment, you could have, let's say, 4, 5, 6 kids, and they are all different and they are of varying ability levels. So tailoring a session where you're going to get one kid, Mike, that says, no, I'm good. That's enough. I'm good with that today. And then you've got another kid that's super competitive who has to finish on a save. That's the balance. That in the club environment is where it becomes really, really tricky. And I think trying to keep it as open-ended as possible is probably the best way to facilitate everybody's needs to that. But again, to Omar's point, knowing what the goal is for that session is really important. Can you do it with each and every kid so that the goals are slightly different? that becomes a little bit more difficult. Maybe, but it becomes a bit more difficult.
I mean, I'll be honest with you, Omar. Like, I think you're biting off a lot, there. I mean, I've seen your sessions. I know you can do it. I know you can make it happen. I think if you have goalkeepers of the same level, I think that's much easier to do than when you have goalkeepers of varying levels. And Louis, I want to bring that up right now, speaking of varying levels and pace, because now talking about post-COVID, Omar's seen this as well too. Every goalkeeper's at a different level right now of where they took their game during this break. So now you've got your club sessions again with Surf, right? And now you've got your goalkeepers. So what are they going to be facing in regards to the actual game? Because if the other players aren't fit and sharp too, those touches are going to be sloppy as well once they start getting into games. So how do you kind of replicate that to get them ready for this kind of like this new level of soccer they're going to be seeing?
Yeah, I mean, going back to just dealing with sessions under the COVID restrictions, if you like, one thing that we did that we felt was more from a health and safety point of view from anything else was we separated the goalkeepers from the teams entirely. So the goalkeepers with me have not been going in with their teams. That's now created, if the teams were going in twice a week, the goalkeepers would come in with me twice a week. It's given us the opportunity to actually have slightly larger than normal goalkeeper groups, still within the restrictions of, let's say, 8 to a session. But now with having those extra numbers, it's given us the opportunity to actually recreate something that you might still see that's semi-similar to a game situation or semi-similar to a team training environment. If you can picture a goalie wars setup where you've got 2 goals, you've got 2 keepers in, maybe you've got 2 crossers and you've got 2 players in the middle, still following social distancing rules and guidelines. But now there's different movements, there's different decisions. There might be a player that's obstructing a shot from another player and last minute gets out the way of it. There might be a player that runs across the line of a cross. So it's definitely not exact game realistic and it's definitely not perfect, but there's still some kind of similarity to the movements and the thoughts and the ideas that the keepers are seeing.
Yeah. Omar, I know you've been doing a really good job of this because I've been watching the videos, and obviously the conditions are not the greatest in regards to the surfaces that you're working with at those sessions. But this is something you've been struggling with. I know you've been talking because you've been talking to several people, everybody about this. And I don't think I'm putting you on a blast here because I think we're all in this similar situation. Is how, like Louis says, it's not going to be perfect, but how do we make it as realistic as possible, yet still safe, Yeah,
no, I think for me at least, I've, from the conversations that I've had with, some of the top coaches, I think the number one thing that I've heard from them is you need to be organized, and not organized in your equipment and how you set it up, but organized in your session planning and your thought process as you write your sessions out. So I think it was Jack Stern one time, I was talking to him and he said he's had those days where he's written out the session and he's known it like the back of his hand. He goes out there and he realizes, you know what? A conversation that I just had with one of my goalkeepers, they're saying they're a little bit more fatigued than I thought. I'm going to scrap it, or I'm going to adjust this drill. And because he was so organized, he had the ability to adjust on the fly. And that kind of stuck with me and made me realize that, when I have these sessions, even though the facility is not great, the ground is not nice, the goalkeepers are probably going to be hurting after a few reps, what can I tell them from each drill that's going to resonate with them and how this drill is going to recreate or replicate some movement from a game? So for example, we're doing like underhanded tosses for like some crosses. The service area is really bad to serve off of. You're kind of like, ankle height grass. So I'm like, I don't know how many good reps I'm going to get out of this. So let's see, maybe we can serve from the hands. So I'm telling the keepers like, okay, it's a different type of service. It's not coming from the ground. But if we're thinking about it from a game realistic perspective, let's really try and delay our movement and pause as the ball is being served. And that's exactly what we're doing in a game off of a free kick or off of a cross. As that ball gets served, pause for a second or delay, like we talked about, Mike, delay for a second. And then from there, adjust the trajectory of where the ball drops. And so I feel like as long as we can let the goalkeepers know specifics as to what we're looking for and how this movement or how this recovery like save and how it replicates and resonates to the game and translates to the game, I think that is the best we can do in terms of keeping things game realistic.
Yeah, I think one thing too that we have to take into kind of consideration as well too, is everybody here. Louis, you brought this up. You said you guys are fortunate at Surf because you have a facility, with a good amount of space to be able to do this. I think everyone is in a different boat. Omar, you're at a public park right now? Is that where you're at
Yes, it's
right
horrible,
now?
dude. I'm switching fields. I probably bought more spray paint in the last probably like 3-4 like 2 months than I've ever bought in my life. I'm just outlining the field every single day, and it's kind of a mission. But honestly, you got to make do with what you got.
Yeah. There was something that was brought up, and I think it might have been Mark Mason from the FA, speaking of the FA, who brought up the fact that when you're stuck, when you've got restrictive situations like field space and everything like that, look and see how the teams have actually set up their sessions, and see where the open space is, and see if you can manipulate their space, because a lot of times they're not thinking about what you need, right? So if you can talk to them, have a conversation, go, you know what? I'd actually prefer this because this is what I'm going to be doing. A lot of times they're flexible, right, Louis? And are willing to move so that you can actually engage in a proper session.
Absolutely. And then that kind of ties in with what Omar was saying about being organized. I did a talk with Lisa Cole a couple of weeks ago about club environments and goalkeeper training. And the biggest thing with it is overplan your session. If you're going to put one session on, really have that session go in 2 or 3 different directions. And that could be because of field restrictions, or you get there and you've got more space than you thought you're going to have. What happens if you plan for 6 kids and 2 kids don't show? So now you've got 4 players. The over planning is crucial. And to Omar's point with Jack, it might be something that you just have to be willing and ready and able to change on the fly. And sometimes that comes with experience. But if you over plan, it might be something that you've actually planned for a change, even though you don't expect it to, if that makes sense. So I think that's massive. I think with that planning situation as well, just to build on what Omar was talking about at the start, the reps and the times that the kids have when you're going back out there is going to be huge, especially just jumping back a bit to what we were previously talking about. When they first come out there, the amount of reps the kids get and the amount of time, their work to rest ratio is going to be really important, because a lot of these kids aren't going to have done these types of game realistic goalkeeper movements that they normally do, because they just wouldn't have done it at home. Whatever, unless they've been sneaking in a private trainer in the back door, or they've been able to get out in some capacity, that they won't have been doing them. They might have been volleying a ball against a wall and getting some technical handling stuff in and footwork stuff in, but it's going to be an issue of overuse training right now if you go too hard with them too early. So the over planning and being creative on the fly and that stuff, I think is massive. The session that I did last night, even though, again, in a fortunate position, I have probably more than enough room right now. But if I didn't, there was a team that had 2 goals almost next to me, and the space in between me and them was enough where if I wanted to then go and work on goalkeeper long balls, or I wanted to add to the session dealing with a ball hit over the top, which is in club, we don't really get the opportunity to, because you just don't have that space more times than not when you're 60 yards out from goal. It was something where I was able to add that to my session, just because when I turned up, the field space was there. Fortunately, it went in with my topic and I was able to adapt it a bit. But yeah, just examples like that are important.
I want to bring this up right now because this is something that's happened to me with younger goalkeepers, not necessarily older goalkeepers during this time period. Is there's been a lot of, for lack of a better term, individual training that's going on during the quarantine, where people have been doing a lot of stuff with rebounders, techne, all those things. And they're great. Don't get me wrong. They're absolutely great. My only thing is that a lot of the goalkeepers did this work and didn't think about why they're doing this work. And then they've come back to me and they're essentially acting as if they're still doing individual skills work. And they're not thinking from that game mindset. So like Omar, how do we get them back into that mindset to think this is really happening? This is a game. You're not against your garage door anymore. Like, we're actually back out on the field.
Something you taught me, Mike, just be very patient with them. I think that's been, for me at least, I always refer back to myself, but this whole process for me has just been, just be extremely patient with people. They've obviously they haven't had someone coaching them through, volleying off the wall, or they're probably catching the ball, just, reaching for the ball because they don't know how to volley it off the wall. And like, they don't know how to, serve at game speed. They don't know how to, some people have different learning capacities, and the way they learn is from a coach, giving them the shout. And then from there, that triggers their movement. And some people are just born with it, where they can trigger that movement themselves. So I think it's understanding now, peeling back a little bit more and being more patient with those players. And then again, just understanding where they've been at from a simple conversation of like, what have you been doing? And then from there, I think as coaches, then we can go back into for me at least, I'm a private coach. So it's not like I'm not with a club. So I don't have 6 at a time. At the most, I'll have 4. So I can have those conversations. And then from there, really take into account, what they've been doing. And for the most part, I train older kids, college kids, and they've all been staying in somewhat good of shape. And if not, they're at least physically, endurance wise, they've been, up to speed with that. So for me, it's just, having those conversations, but having extreme patience. And it's, for me, at least, it's been putting my ego on the side of like, I don't really care anymore how my sessions look. Of course, I want them to look great, but it's not about me anymore. I'm going to get them up to speed. And I've noticed it after probably 3 or 4 sessions. I had a kid who looked awful, and all of a sudden they're back. And I'm like, oh my God, this is what I remember you prior to COVID. And he's like, yeah, I just needed, 3 or 4 sessions, and now I'm back to where I'm at. So I think some people just need to get their groove back, their rhythm back. And I think us as coaches, we should set the tone by being patient with it.
Well, I'm going to give a perfect example, and then I want to ask Louis what he thinks about this. Like, I had a situation not that long ago, probably about a week and a half ago, where I clearly saw that one kid's weak foot was nowhere near the other foot. And they basically broke down to me and they said, well, I was just focusing on my strong foot during the break. And I think that says a lot, because a lot of people, when something's difficult, they give up on it and they focus on what they're enjoying. And especially during the quarantine, like, great, the kid was working. That's awesome. They were putting the work in and everything like that. But I think especially for a lot of young parents out there, or young goalkeepers out there, and parents, when it's difficult and when it's not easy, like, try to motivate, your young goalkeeper to work on that, because they had the time. And Louis, I don't know if you've noticed this as well too.
It's really difficult, isn't it, when you've got no coach there motivating you or inspiring you and talking you through it? Because one of the big things you get from parents is when they'll contact you as a coach, they'll say, hey, can you say something to little Jimmy or little Jane about this? Because when we say it, it falls on deaf ears as a parent. Yeah. So you can only imagine what lockdown was like, with kids trying to work on something, or mom and dad screaming at them, yelling at them, hey, you got to work on this. Parents probably got put to the test, and kids probably got put to the test a lot during that time. So, I mean, everybody's going to have dealt with that lockdown period differently. Some people would have gone away and it would have been perfect for them, because when else are you going to get 3-4 months to work on one isolated thing that you have to get better at, which when you've got team training every single day and games every single weekend, you just don't get that opportunity to do to that capacity. And I've seen kids when we've come back that have dropped the ball, and they've come back out of shape, and they've come back rusty, and they've literally done nothing. And that's where the patience piece is. You've really got to check yourself as a coach. So again, I don't think there's a right or wrong answer to this at the moment, Mike. It is other than being patient, like you've both said. Yeah.
So let's just break down. So in regards to surf, right? Or you're saying, obviously you guys are staying away from the team right now. You guys are all training in isolation, as Franz Hook calls it. Kind of take us through the week basically of your goalkeeper right now.
So we follow, again, purely from a health and safety point of view, we followed the whole herd mentality situation, where if we were going to do goalkeeper training, which we all decided, we felt it was, the keepers had to do that. You couldn't keep them in with their team and then just receive shots with me standing behind them in the goal, for example, trying to give them pointers. We had to separate them and not have them bounce back and forth between the keeper training and their team. So it's actually, from a selfish point of view, been awesome, because they've come to me twice a week in their groups, and we've been able to rotate those sessions from easing them in from a technical point of view, just having fun activation kind of games where there's no pressure right now and we don't really have to get on at them, and we just start getting them to fall back in love with being out on the field, to then when we've got slightly bigger groups doing some more game realistic situations. So a lot of 2-goal games, 3-goal, 4-goal games where there's multiple angles and different shots. And if we haven't had the opportunity of having 2 full-size goals, it's been 1 goal and then pugs or mini goals or targets or that kind of stuff. So again, having to be creative, but that's what it's looked like. Our oldest group, we've managed to, on the girls' side anyway, have really good, strong numbers with the 19s and the 17s. So that's been great because they've been really able to get after it. With some of the boys and the younger girls, they've still been your normal goalkeeper size groups from anywhere from 3 to 5 kids. And while I've probably gone on into the sessions with a specific topic for that day, based on how the kids have reacted and the age of the kids and the level of the kids, if we've had to adapt it, we've had to adapt it. And I've just gone into this period as a little bit like, we're going to work on a bit of everything, because to be honest, more than anything right now, you're just retraining how to dive, how to land, how to fall. Even if you've been able to do some technical stuff at home during lockdown, your body's not used to hitting the grass, X amount of times in an hour session or a 70, 80, 90 minute game. So just slowly ease them into that. And we're at the point now where we've been able to ramp it up a little bit, working hard on kids' service. I mean, I probably got my most frustrated at the end of last week when the 19s couldn't hit the target or couldn't hit a cross into the 6-yard box, which got a little bit frustrating. But having the kids do a lot of the service stuff has been good as well, because for them, it's just repetition of striking the ball and getting their different ranges in as well, which has been nice to do.
That's actually one thing I have seen that's been a positive in regards to the kids that have been working during this quarantine, is a lot of them have come back and their skill set of actually striking a ball and honestly, just their accuracy has just gotten a lot better. Omar, I know even you have been working on your accuracy during the quarantine, because you had the time over and over and over again.
Yes, no, it's been a good time. I think there's like certain skill sets that us as coaches need to have, and I think it was Aaron Hyde, and he was mentioning it, that professional goalkeepers, some goalkeepers don't have any patience with you. You have to have quality service, right foot, left foot, and that's the standard. And I think for me, at least, I have aspirations of getting to that level. So I took a good amount of time and took my left knee has bad tendonitis. So I was like, you know what? I got to start striking with my left foot so that my right knee can take a little bit more of that plant push. So it's been good. I definitely feel like I've made some strides, but far from where I need to be.
My favorite thing about that whole story, though, is that Omar told Aaron, he's like, man, I just watched that session that you were doing with your left foot. And I was like, man, I just need to keep working on my left foot, because I'm never going to be able to coach at that level unless I can serve the ball with that left foot. And Aaron goes, oh, that was my right.
He's like, no, and Aaron was like, no, I'm left footed. And I was like, okay.
He's left footed. Oh, he's left footed. Oh,
yeah, I was like, okay, that makes more sense.
I mean, I don't know about you right now, Omar, but I'm at the point where I've had to come up with creative warm up and cool down routines, because if I do get out, I mean, especially after lockdown, my lower back and hamstrings.
Yes. 100%. No, 100%. I had to foam roll recently, and like after I was hanging out with one of my friends yesterday, and like I dropped something on the floor, and I kind of bent over to go pick it up, and she was like, "Oh my god!" I screamed like, "Oh my god!" And she was like, "What's wrong?" And I was like, my back. Like I don't know. I can't tell you. My lower hips, my back, everything is completely messed up. Especially in these privates, I have to serve most of the ball, so my legs are killing me.
Yeah. You need to draft in some extra players in your privates just to get them to serve.
I might have to team up with a field player coach and be like, look, just come through with your players. I'll do my players. We'll make something happen at the end.
So I'm kind of a hypochondriac, and I was lying in bed this morning, and I was like, I think I might have blood clots, because
oh my God.
Basically what happened is yesterday is like, without warming up, is I trained a college keeper. That was the worst decision ever, because my body completely tightened up, and it's not a good thing. So all those young goalkeeper coaches out there who think that they can just walk out there, like, give it a few years. Give it a few years and see how your body feels.
No, I'm trying to get ahead of it. I'm trying to get ahead of it with proper stretch routines. I might even drop a YouTube video and like just tell all the goalkeeper coaches, like, this is a routine that I'm going to try and like go to a doctor to. We're going to all of us are going to grow together and make sure that we don't lose any youth in this process of coaching for the next 10 years.
I mean, that's not a bad idea. I mean, we always talk about proper warm up and proper, dynamic movement for players. Maybe we
Yeah,
should
we
do
got
an
to get
episode
one.
where we're talking about for goalkeeper coaches.
100%.
Louis, I want to bring that up because the injury thing, that's something I'm seeing a lot of right now. And it's not just in my own sessions, it's in other people's sessions that I'm seeing too. Kids are getting hurt. And it's not anything that the goalkeeper coaches are doing. Again, it's just that some of them are on different pages than other kids are in regards to speed of play. How are you varying your service, kind of understanding where your goalkeepers are at?
Yeah, probably have to take a few steps back first, because, and again, this depending on where everybody's at with their current situation of getting back out onto fields. We were, again, very fortunate that we'd hired a sports performance director just before COVID kicked in. And myself and Kellen, the other goalkeeper coach at Surf, asked him to put a goalkeeper-specific fitness, strength and conditioning routine together. And it ended up being, obviously, COVID went on way longer than we all thought, the lockdown period, and it's still going on, like you were saying, but it ended up being this 8-week program. And we gave it to the keepers. There's links that sees Rory, our sports science guy, doing the workouts as a demo so they can view it and see it. It can be done from, I think our U13s use it all the way up to the 19s, and it's all your own body weight kind of strength stuff. So a 13-year-old can do the similar activity to what the 19-year-old's doing, because it's going to work them individually and uniquely in their own ways. Me and Kellen ran a session ourselves doing it to test it out, and that was an eye-opening situation to realize that my hamstrings are extremely weak and my quads aren't and my knees aren't what I thought they were. But that was really, really good, and a lot of the kids did a lot of that, and they came back quite strong, the base. So I think I'm not a sports science expert at all, so I'm always looking to these guys for advice and help with warm-ups and cool-downs and the fitness stuff for goalkeeping, because you don't just want to go out there and see your keepers run 120s to get fit. So a lot of this base strength, almost treating it like an off-season period, was huge, and the players that did that, you could really see come back in good shape. Now, with that being said, definitely keeping an eye on the reps and the loads and how long. Like, if you're not timing almost everything that you're doing or really planning the reps that you're in, you're going to put your kids in a tough situation. We had one of our 19s come in and say, the activity that we're doing, where I think there was 3 sets. There was a short cross, a service for handling, and then another shot to save. And we maybe did 2 reps of it, and then it just rotated round. And she said she felt it after maybe the 2nd or the 3rd time. And we told her to take a couple of sessions off, like take the next 2 sessions off if it's feeling bad, just because it isn't something that you want to get into right now, where you're getting an overuse injury from going from 0 to 100 in such a short amount of time. And I think it's something that kids have got to be honest about, and coaches have got to try and be aware about, and really plan as best as you can to not overdo it. And this kind of goes back to, again, what we were talking about at the start with the communication piece to head coaches and parents as well. Let them know the kids aren't going to be dead on the floor in these sessions right now. So if they come back and they maybe feel like they didn't get a workout, that might not be the worst thing at the moment, because we are just easing them into things.
Yeah, I think you brought up a really good point, because that's kind of one of the issues that I've been having in regards to parents being like, and I had a parent straight up say this to me the other day, and the person said it a little bit more bluntly than this. It was like this Russian guy, and he's like, he used to work harder. He's like, he's not giving you what. And I'm like, look, man, I understand where your mindset is in regards from a work ethic standpoint and everything like that. But like, I'm seeing him huffing and puffing, and I don't want to see him get hurt. And I also want him to feel positive when he leaves this session. And that was something I was starting to notice. I was noticing just the negativity that was starting based on just, he couldn't handle the pace. So I eased it off, and I was trying to have this conversation. I think that's a difficult conversation right now with parents, for them to understand, like, it's the same kid. It's not, he hasn't changed or whatever. Like, you got to give them a little bit of slack too, right, Omar?
Yeah, I think so. I think yeah, again, as they come back, again, we have to have patience and be realistic. And I think, again, I've fallen into that category. I've dealt with some parents who were like, yeah, I had a young kid, and the mom was like, yeah, he got fat over break. We fed him a lot of food, and he has a little
Parents
tummy.
are great. Parents are the best, aren't they?
I know, but it's but honestly, again, I've trained some of the older kids that I've had, and I've been really fortunate that I've had 2 or 3 kids who come and train, and after they're done, they're doing sprints, they're doing band work, they're doing body weight exercises to maintain some foundation. So I've been very fortunate with training older kids, but I've had 2 or 3 younger parents who have been, like you said, my kind of almost apologists for their kids of like, this is not what he is. He's better. She's better than this. Just give them some time. And I'm like, no, I'm okay with it. I don't know why you're apologizing for him. Just let it be. Like, I don't know. But I think it's just being patient. I think the kids, as long as they have kind of that safe space to give themselves 3 or 4 sessions to get themselves back up to speed, I think that's all they need.
I mean, I straight up had a parent. Go ahead, Louis.
I think we can guide them a little bit with that as well by, we all talk about IDPs and we talk about communicating to kids and communicating to parents and giving them a little bit of ownership. I think right now it's a good opportunity to give kids little short-term goals, but have them come up with it themselves. Like you're starting now really at point zero. Where do you want to be in 2 weeks? Where do you want to be in a month? Let's say games go ahead on that second week of September, like they normally do. Where do you want to be at that point? And give them those little goals. But again, give them the ownership. Like, you tell me where you want to be. And then if it's way far off where I think, we can talk about it. Otherwise, as the coach, you can guide me sometimes with that.
Yeah, you brought up a really good point right here in regards to, having the communication and that open communication between the parent, the goalkeeper, and the goalkeeper coach. We just mentioned berating being kind of one of these issues that we're seeing that's a negative that needs to be changed or adjusted in the way that people are presenting, their point of view. What are some of the other mistakes, Louis, that you've been seeing maybe goalkeeper coaches or parents making during this time period where you think you might be able to offer some advice that you've seen has been positive?
Definitely the expectations and the amount of training that they're doing is probably the biggest one that I've seen so far. I think with that, it's just understanding the consistency to train. Like if training sessions are happening once a week or twice a week with your club right now, don't go home and do nothing. Because I've seen that a little bit with some kids. They think just because they're back in club, then great, I'm back in club, I don't have to do anything else. And I'm sure every kid and every coach has always said or heard, whatever you do in your club environment, it isn't enough. Even if you're in the DA environment, the ECL environment where you train 3-4 days a week, it still isn't enough. What else are you doing? That hour and a half that you have at club a night, there's other things you can be doing, whether it is going home and watching video, whether it can be reading a book, whether it can be working on your psychosocial elements and your mental toughness part of the game. Don't just go back to your mindset of whatever you were doing before. Do and use the things that you were using in the off period, in the lockdown period, and add that to the added sessions that are coming in. Because if you can do that, in theory, it should make you a double, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 times better goalkeeper.
Dude, I love what you said. Go ahead, Omar.
No, I would add on to that completely. And I've had a young goalkeeper who's, like a workaholic, and he calls me and he says, "Hey, I'm just really curious if you've seen my performance and you've seen my body type and you've seen all the little characteristics that I have. Can you give me like 2 or 3 goalkeepers that you feel in the world, professional level, USL level, it could be EPL, it could be Bundesliga, wherever, that share very similar characteristics to me so that I could watch some of their games? And if you have those games and you can send full games or even highlights, can you send those to me as well? Like, I want to keep learning." So when he said that to me, I was like, I love film. So I was like, absolutely. So I thought about 3 or 4 goalkeepers that look like him, Casillas, Navas, like guys who are a little bit shorter and a little petite, but still have, that athleticism and can read the game really well. And so I sent him those pieces of video, and I said, watch these highlights, tell me what you see. And now, finishing up sessions, we're discussing saves that we watched from like the highlight tapes of Keylor Navas and saying, yeah, it was a little unorthodox, but he got away with it. Remember that save that I had earlier in the session when it was a little unorthodox? I kind of jumped with the wrong leg, but I saved it. Like, isn't that very similar to what he does? And he got away with it too, right? So like we're having conversations that are deeper than just technique, tactical stuff. Now we're actually having conversations about stuff that relates to him, but his mind is going everywhere, and I don't have to stimulate it for him anymore.
I mean, look, I think that is so integral, and just creating that thinking goalkeeper that we've all been trying to do. And also, I love what you said about the unorthodox, because that's another issue that I've been seeing a lot of too in these new sessions post-COVID. A lot of goalkeeper coaches are sticking to their book and their plan of like what they want to do. And Louis, like you've been saying, you need to be able to make changes quickly on the fly, based on what you're seeing in front of you. And if you just try to stick to the book, it could fall apart. If it's not working, you need to find it. I want to talk about the isolation training, Louis, that you said about, you still need to be putting in that work, because I've straight up had kids recently say to me, they're like, oh yeah, well, I stopped doing Techne because club started again. I'm like, and it was like, it's like magic or something. Like, oh, well, club's back, so I'm going to be awesome again. Like, that's just the way goalkeeping works. Like, can you please stress to I mean, obviously you work with youth national team programs. You see some of the most elite goalkeepers, in the age groups in the country here. Can you please explain what it is that they do in their off time that makes your job so much easier once you get them at the national team level or even at your club?
Yeah, one coach said to me when we were going through the lockdown stuff, and I was telling him what we were doing. He turned around and he said to me, "Kids should be doing that anyway. Like why aren't the kids doing that on a regular basis? They should be doing that on top of their 3-4 sessions a week and their 1 or 2 games at the weekend. They've got to manage their load. They've got to have an off day. Or they've got to have a recovery day. But why aren't they doing all that stuff anyway?" And he's spot on. And that's been a big message. I did a podcast with the Techni guys, and I said the same to them. Like, I wish I'd actually known more about those types of platforms for goalkeepers as well, prior to all of this, because it's such a huge thing that you could add to your goalkeeping curriculum as a private trainer or as a goalkeeper coach at a club, that you can have kids do on the side. The biggest issue you've got in club soccer is we probably, in a normal regular season, you might have the kids once a week for 45 minutes. The realities of club out here, it doesn't look like what the academy goalkeepers get, where they get them before every session for 30, 45 minutes, whatever, and then they go in with the team. You might get them coming rushing over because they've just finished their team practice, and then you got them for 30 minutes. You might get them and then they leave early because their team practice starts. And so anything extra that they can be doing is huge. And it doesn't just have to be from the technical point of view. What Omar was just saying then about video is absolutely massive. We did something during the lockdown period where we broke up shot stopping in zones. So when the forward's in here, this is where the keeper could be. When the forward's closer, we broke it down. Kind of stole it from Ian Fewer's presentation. I don't know if you've seen that on his 1v1s. Really, really good. And we had the kids create their own version of that presentation. So we had clips of them from games, and we said to them, you now go out and find more clips of yourself or of pros and show us what it looks like. They came back with that. Then the second week we had them break it down. Now I don't just want to see the clips. I want you to explain each clip, pros and cons, positives, negatives. And the kids loved it. They loved doing it. I'd say we didn't get every single one do it. And not every single one did it to the best of their ability. But kids these days can clip. They can go on YouTube. They know how to get it. They know how to work iMovie and all those things. And they loved it. And that in itself just makes them a better goalkeeper because they're learning more about the game. And I think in a culture out here where we still have an issue with how much soccer our kids watch, both on the men's side and on the women's side, if the more you can get them to analyze the game and clip themselves, as well as I know I was listening to Fran's episode with you guys, and he kind of got on you, Omar, about don't have them watch a pro, have them watch themselves. I think you can get the balance with that, right?
Yeah.
But the more they can do that stuff, the better. My favorite was Fran's stuff. He's like, why is he showing me? He was like, that's not him. It's useless. It's useless. And Omar's like, okay, well, maybe we could back it up a little bit there. Like, these kids aren't at Barcelona right now.
I don't know. I definitely, I personally, I've told the story 100 times, but I used to watch old Schmeichel videos, old Casillas videos. I used to have, and we had a Honda Odyssey, which people hopefully from all around the world, but maybe California would know about these cars. They had a little DVD player in the back seat, and we had the 2002 World Cup, and then we had the 2004 Euros. And I used to watch those on repeat. They show all the highlights, all the big saves, everything, every match review. And we had a game in actual San Diego Surf Cup, and I had a game. I think it was a quarterfinal, and I'm watching. I think it was Spain. I forget who they're playing against, but ball comes over the top. Iker Casillas comes out, heads it out of bounds. He runs back. Everyone's applauding him, like saying how good of a job he does. And I remember that same exact play. The ball comes over the top, and I was like, "Oh, let me try this." And I was like 12 years old, bouncing. I come out, I header it out of bounds. All the parents are like, "That's a great job." And then I'm walking off the field like, why don't I watch more of that so that I could steal ideas from the pros and maybe see if it works? I had no idea about proper size, who's fast off their line, who's slow off their line, who has, height. I didn't even know Peter Schmeichel was like 6'3", 6'4" until I watched that tape of him and it said he had like a quadruple XL jersey. I didn't know like all that stuff. I had no idea, but I was still like, my mind started going crazy of how can I apply this? How can I apply this? And sometimes it worked and sometimes it didn't. But I was like, I love the process. I love the game. And I think when your mind has that curiosity trait, you're able to see what you like and what you don't like about a goalkeeper's technique. And then from there, you move on and see if it works for you. But I think, yes, I've had goalkeepers that I've trained and I say, hey, did you watch this game? Even like women goalkeepers, high level. I said, did you watch the NWSL, like I guess the tournament that's going on now? I didn't even know that it was back. I'm like, you have no idea that NWSL is back? Like, you don't know who these goalkeepers are? They had no idea. So it's just like, to me, it kind of baffles me of like, what are we doing? Like, why are you out here? Like, do you love the position or?
I mean, straight up, like I've had this conversation with NWSL coaches who are like, yeah, in the draft, there are girls in this draft right now who've never watched the league. Yeah. And they want to play in the league.
I believe it. I believe that. It's a culture that I think we have a responsibility to try and change. Again, you can't force anybody to do anything, but I think there's little tricky, clever ways that you can implement it. Again, you ask kids to go and clip videos of, if it's the women, hey, don't go and get Casillas or Edison or whoever from the Premier League. Go and get somebody from the women's national team, because those clips are all available online. Go and get someone from the NWSL, and you can kind of trick them into watching it and analysing it. And it is something that we can affect as coaches, I think. And to Omar's point about when you do watch pros as well as yourself, because it is important to watch yourself, but everybody needs a role model. Everybody needs somebody that they look up to, that they want to try and implement. And if you're clever enough as a player to be able to think, I'm going to try this in this practice, or I'm going to try it in that game, it helps. It kind of goes into Dan Abraham's game face model. I know you've had Dan on the show before, and I mean, he's amazing. I think every player should follow the stuff that he talks about. But his game face model is all about having somebody that you want to try and emulate to be the best version of yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. That guy, he did the whole Neuer. I think he did the whole Neuer one, was one of the examples that he gave. And it was based on, because kind of the profile of Neuer was, and that's what that goalkeeper wanted to be. So they used the Neuer, the kind of the representation of Neuer within inside themselves. I love stuff like that because I love acting. So I love performing. So it's like, wow, I'm playing a character. This is awesome. This is great. Look at me. All of a sudden I'm Zach Steffen. Probably never.
No, but I had a goalkeeper who I train now. He was at Cal State LA with me. He's 6'6", 6'7". He's huge. And he's always reaching out to me and saying, hey, how come you don't post enough like Fraser Forster highlights? And I'm like, well, I just, he's playing for Celtic. I don't really watch too much of him. He's like, well, honestly, I watch him specifically because I want to see what he does. Does he use his feet on foot saves, on angle shots? Because I need to know because I'm so tall, it's kind of hard for me to get down to the ground. So like there are specific traits about certain goalkeepers that you can definitely emulate, or at least just see what works for them and then try it out for yourself. And at worst, it doesn't work. And maybe on the path of you trying something new, you figure out something else. But I think just having the goalkeepers, I guess, open their mind to allowing new ideas in and not being stale or not being stuck on one thing, to open their mind to new things, I think is huge.
It's a cool little activity to do, isn't it, with your kids, where you say, can you come up with what your characteristics are as a keeper? Really get them to think. And then, okay, can you find a pro that has similar characteristics and show me some clips? Yeah. And again, it's just getting the keeper to think outside the box and become a little bit more of a student of the game.
Now, Louis,
Absolutely.
I'm not gonna name out kids here, but I've done that with some kids, and the players that have come back, I'm like, ooh, you don't know who you are. You do not know who you are. This is not the proper representation of yourself right here. And then I'll show them like some USL keeper. They're like, where's that dude playing? I'm like, oh, he plays in the USL. He's like, wait, that's what that. No, this Champions League keeper. That's me right there. I'm like, well, I think you're more built like this dude right here. This is a good representation. But I think that's another thing too. And Omar, I want to give you props for this because you're for a while you were showcasing a lot of the similar types of goalkeepers, of very, very high level goalkeepers. And throughout the last couple of years, you've kind of varied the goalkeepers that you've been breaking down in games, and you've been showcasing different types of profiles of goalkeepers, both on the men's side and on the women's side. I know AC and you had a wonderful discussion about that from PSG.
I'll be getting
that.
called out. I'll be getting called out by a lot of people on this show. It's crazy. People come here. People come here and they have some anger they got to let out, and they just throw it towards me, and I just got to take it.
No, but I think that's the reason we're all here, though, is to learn and have these discussions and have these dialogues. And I'm appreciative of the fact that people are willing to be open and honest on this panel. I think that that is extremely, extremely important. But I want to say this, Louis, is that you guys have San Diego Loyal right there in your backyard. There's no reason, at least the Surf Kids can't go down and check out. Well, I don't know what the situation is right now in regards to fans or whatever, but there's no, in a normal time period, there's no reason they can't go down there and watch these goalkeepers live. And how important is it for them to watch goalkeepers of a higher level live rather than just on television, because they can really see what they're doing off the ball?
Yeah, it giving me an opportunity for a cheap plug here, Mike, because we've been doing a surf podcast during the COVID period for all the surf affiliates, and we got Landon on, and he was awesome, and we were talking about that. We were talking about what it looked like before COVID for them and now, and as hopefully as they start getting back out and playing, and that was a big thing. Like how can we help you get more fans out, and are you open to allowing it? And they didn't want to affiliate themselves with any youth academy to begin with, because they felt like there's so many in the area that it was best to leave it open and try and get as many different clubs and different players from different environments going out there and watch. And that was how we ended the podcast, was how can we get more kids out there to watch you train, because they're open to it. They're open to allowing kids to go out and watch training sessions. And it's such a cool pathway, I think, from the youth game, collegey game, as a lead way into the pros, that there's a lot of very, very good players playing at that standard, whether you're goalkeepers or field players. And it's a good opportunity to go and see the next level for sure.
Yeah.
I want to add on to that. I think from it wasn't as normal. I think you'd have to be somebody who's just craves goalkeeping 24/7 or just football 24/7. I feel like I was one of those people who always, no matter what game it was, I'm sitting there watching, just seeing what the goalkeepers do. And I think it's become a little bit more normalized throughout this COVID, where all of your friends were on webinars. Your coaching staff from the top down, they had webinars, and they, like you said, you give them activities to activate their thought process of who they are, what their character traits are, what goalkeepers do they emulate, all that. So I think if we can start normalizing the energy that we gave to COVID to kind of find creative ways to stimulate our goalkeepers when we can't have the physical activity, I think that's the next level of goalkeeping. And I think hopefully here in the States, we're going to have incredible goalkeepers who are born in around this time, or who are probably 13, 14 around this time, who were influenced heavily by the video footage or the video analysis and the tactics, technical, all that stuff off the field. And then once they were able to apply it, hopefully we have a new wave of those guys. So I think this energy that we have now, whether it was the sharing of ideas from coaches or the young goalkeepers stepping in webinars and learning about how to break down stuff and how to do proper warm-ups, how to do proper stretches, I really hope that we keep the same energy. Yeah,
Louis, I want to talk to you about that, because with all this content and these outside the box exercises and presentations and everything like that a lot of clubs have done with their goalkeepers during the quarantine, how are you guys at Surf going to continue that type of education even while they're back on the field? And do you guys have a plan to implement that as part of your regular curriculum moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, one of the best things that has come out of a really horrible time period is the amazingness of the soccer community, with people sharing ideas and then people thinking outside the box, from coaches coming up with creative ways that the kids can continue to train, to players coming up with creative things. I mean, the amount of stuff we just gave our kids, hey, who's got an idea? Who wants to do something different this week other than just skills? Like, who's got another idea? And some kids were coming up with all these different funny, creative things. Some were just team bonding ideas that you can now implement within your yearly training plan when you feel like you need a bit of a boost with team chemistry. So there's definitely aspects. I think the classroom concept, the Zoom concept, is the biggest thing. We all know that when it rains in Southern California, everybody turns into the Wicked Witch of the West and melts, and no fields are open and everything's on shutdown. So instead of you just cancelling your practice, or as a club, you're having to fork out loads of money to go and try and find a turf field, now you know you can do a Zoom team meeting. And that might be kids doing skills in the garage. It might be, as a coach, you've got a presentation, a PowerPoint that you can now do with them. It might be you do some video analysis of one of your games. And so while the kids aren't technically on the field, physically training, they're still getting something out of it that's making them better soccer players. So I think that's a big, big thing. And just the continue to share ideas element as well. I think this is probably a little bit more for coaches. I was listening to Gary Canine do some stuff recently, and he was saying when he was in college, he was so open, but nobody ever said to him, hey, can I come and watch a session? And as coaches, I think we probably need to do that more. And maybe it's taken this period for us to realize that people are open to sharing ideas for free, and being a little bit more. I mean, Omar, you're probably leading the way with this. How many people have you reached out to in the last 6 months that maybe a year ago you might have felt, oh God, I don't really know how to, or that person's not going to give me the time of day. So I think as coaches, that's our responsibility to get better in that way for the kids as well.
Well, I mean, look, here's a perfect example. I mean, obviously, Louis, you left that great review after the Franz Hook episode, and thank you again. We had a tremendous time with him for 2 hours on the podcast, and people were like, how did you get Franz Hook on the podcast? I said, I just asked.
Yeah.
I just asked. And sometimes it's just that easy of kind of having that mindset of like, why wouldn't this person want to help the goalkeeping community? Why do I think that this person would have a negative stigma towards this or not want to give back? The whole reason that a lot of these people are at the positions that they are is because they have been giving back to the game and they keep wanting to learn. I mean, I think the thing about when Phil Wedden always resonates with me is when he says, he's like, every day I'm still learning. And Peter Meller, Peter Meller's been around the game for, forever, and no disrespect to Peter, he's just been around the game for a long time, and he says he's still learning. So just be willing to communicate with these people, and pretty much, if you have something of value that you can give back to the game, people are going to want to give that back. Just yourself right now. You've got to go out to the field, you got to do sessions, but instead, you're going to spend an hour with us before you do that. So yeah. So, all right. Well, we're about an hour and 10 in right now. How are you guys doing on time? Should we go a couple more thoughts or start wrapping up? How you guys
I
doing?
got to run soon.
Okay. You got to run soon. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. So then let's end it right here with both you guys here. I'll start with Omar, since you got to run soon, and then I'll go with Louis. Final pieces of advice to any goalkeeper coaches out there who have not started working, their clubs have not started yet, to be ready to go once they get the green light, and what they should do that first session forward.
I think kind of like what Louis said. I'm going to compare what Louis said to like my own experiences. Just keep everything simple to start. You want to gauge where your goalkeepers are at and see where their fitness levels are at, where their mindset is at, where their fitness level is at. And I think once you're able to kind of gauge that, then you can kind of tailor the sessions around that. But if you go into it like how kind of I was, kind of gung-ho, really trying to apply all these new concepts, and the goalkeepers aren't at that speed, for me, I could strike a ball, a month off, 2 months off. I can strike a ball. It's going to hurt, but I can strike a ball pretty quickly, and, my touch is still there. But for goalkeepers, that game level fitness and just that goalkeeper fitness, it takes 3 or 4 sessions to really get back up to speed. So take it slow. put your ego at the door, be patient, let them kind of dictate how it needs to be. And then once you have those 1 or 2 sessions in, then you could probably start expanding the range a little bit more. But take it slow, maybe a bubble work or just technical stuff. And then eventually you get into tactical where it's a little less unannounced.
Yep. Lou, anything you want to add?
Yeah, I mean, try and have a 2 to a 4 week plan to begin with. I know that's tough because things seem to be going forwards, backwards, all over the place, certainly over here. But try and have a 2, 4, 6 week plan. Over plan your sessions so you're super prepared. Ease the kids into it. Be patient, and then really go into this knowing what your goalkeeper philosophy is and how it syncs with the club's philosophy, because that ultimately is what's going to kick the kids, give them a head start when we get back to some kind of normality. If your team's a build-out club, don't be working on smashing 50, 60-yard balls right now, or vice versa. Try and make it implemented as much as possible so that the kids are ready to ease into their team sessions. And I think you'll find it's probably seamless when they do.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a heck of a lot easier than them having to try to understand 3 different systems and then get thrown into one and be like, but we were just working on this with the goalkeeper coach. And it's like, yeah, that makes a heck of a lot of sense. Do you guys have a specific style of play, by the way, Louis, at Surf? A Surf philosophy all the way across the board with all the clubs?
Yeah, we do. It's from the boys' side and the girls' side, I would say, is semi-separate. They're 2 different built philosophies, even though there's a lot of similarities in them. Just 2 people have built them differently. But yeah, I mean, it's a very build out. If you go from the goalkeeper's point of view, it is a very build out, try and play short, try and organize your team shape and unorganize the opposition and exploit in different ways. And we probably concede most of our chances in transitions within our own half because of that. So how that affects the goalkeeper in defensive transitions and defending the space and defending in the area, it's how we build a lot of the goalkeeper training sessions around those 2 things. There's always distribution and build out stuff in everything we do, and defensive transitions because of that.
Yeah. Well, I want to say this is probably the first podcast in a while where Omar Zeenni has not presented a video, and I was waiting for some sort of specific. Here's a session to do right post quarantine for you to follow. Well, awesome, man. Louis, before we go, if anybody out there wants to know more about what you guys do at Surf, or if there's a goalkeeper coach out there who wants, maybe a little bit of advice, I know that, obviously you're pretty active on social media. Where is the best place for people to reach out to you?
Yeah, at Twitter, I'm at LouisHunt17, LouisHunt17, and on Instagram, the best place for goalkeeping for me is at GK Graduation Academy.
All right. And Omar, obviously you can reach him at ProGK Academy _ on Instagram, but keep the DMs specific, because I know sometimes people reach out to you, Omar, and they go like, hey man, what does it take to be a pro? Or like, I think I'm good enough to play pro. Or like, do you know anybody who in the Premier League? And like, you're like, you know what, man, like if you could give me something a little bit more specific here so I can help you out, it'd be great. Cause I've got, 17,000 of these that coming into me every 10 minutes. So,
yeah.
Remember, guys, contact at insidethe18media.com. That's the number 18media.com. If you have a guest suggestion or a topic suggestion, or at Goalkeeper Podcast on all social media platforms. Louis, thanks again, man, for honestly your continuous support of the show and all the content out there. We really appreciate it, man. When people such as yourself, we're coaching at such a good level and working with such elite players, enjoy what we're doing. It makes us feel like we're going to continue doing it and keep trying to inspire other people. So,
yeah, absolutely. It's this, again, the stuff that you guys put out there is great on this platform, Omar, on your platform as well. It's really good. I was saying this to a coach the other day. When you have so much soccer on normally, and you're watching the Premier League, and then the NWSL, and then you got the MLS, and then you got the German League, and then you got the national team. To be able to click onto the podcast and hear you do the recaps of things, it's a good way for a goalkeeper coach to keep their finger on the pulse with the world of goalkeeping. So I appreciate what you guys do. It's awesome.
No, thanks, man. And before we go, Omar, I know you got to go right here. I want to stress to everybody out there, those recap shows, check them out. we have people on that are not goalkeeper people a lot of times. They're soccer analysts. And the reason is, and we talked about this on some of the posts here, is that I want all the young goalkeepers out there to start watching the game and learning the game. Don't just watch the goalkeepers. We want you to start understanding the game and how the goalkeeper is involved in the game. Because as you say, you're talking about a build-up team like yourself, Lou. If your goalkeepers don't understand the game and how a play develops, they're not going to be able to play in your system.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. All right, guys, that's all the time on Inside the 18, and we are out. Later.